Imagine you're sitting at a very polite, very high-stakes dinner party.
Oh, the worst kind of dinner party.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by brilliant people, colleagues you respect, maybe people you're really trying to impress.
Right. High pressure.
Yeah. And the host serves this main course that includes like heavily sautéed spinach.
A dangerous choice.
A very dangerous choice. Because over the course of the meal, you happen to notice that 3 of the people at the table have these massive, unsightly pieces of green spinach lodged dead center in their front teeth.
Oh, no.
And there are no mirrors in the room, right? And nobody can feel the spinach in their own teeth.
Because you never can.
Right. And because this is this highly polite, incredibly awkward professional gathering, nobody wants to be the one to lean over and say, hey, you have food in your teeth, and embarrass anyone.
Yeah, you just don't do that at a work dinner.
So everyone just sits there, smiling, chatting, pretending absolutely everything is fine, while fully aware of the spinach situation. So the question is, how long does it take for those 3 people to magically figure it out and clean their teeth without a single person ever directly telling them?
It's a great setup.
Today, we are peering behind the curtain to answer that exact question. Because if you're joining us for this deep dive, you are someone who loves to learn, someone who is always trying to peek behind the mechanics of everyday life.
Absolutely.
Usually those mechanics are visible. Like you look at why people stop at a red light and you point to the law or the police car on the corner.
The physical things you can see.
Right. But then you step into the world of mass social behavior, and that mechanical worldview just totally shatters. We are looking at a landscape today that is completely invisible.
It's the absolute definition of an invisible engine. I mean, we naturally want the forces governing society to be tangible things, right? Things we can measure.
Yeah, like rules and physical barriers.
Exactly. But the true forces governing whether a society cooperates or whether it instantly collapses, they're entirely in our heads.
Which is wild.
It is.
Yeah.
So our goal today with these sources is to give you, the listener, a completely new lens to see the world. When we're done here, you're going to have a new way to track the invisible threads connecting, well, everything.
Everything from like the evolution of human language to the survival of modern dictatorships.
Yeah, right down to the simple, agonizingly awkward act of trying to meet a friend for a cup of coffee. It all comes down to the architecture of our awareness.
So that is our narrative mission for this deep dive. We're taking this whole stack of source material, ranging from game theory to cognitive science to evolutionary biology, and we're going to unpack how humans think about what other humans are thinking.
Which gets very meta very quickly.
It does. And crucially, we're going to explore why learning something in public, even if every single person already knew that fact privately,
Right.
can just instantly change the entire world. Okay, let's unpack this. Our source material starts by drawing a very hard mathematical distinction between different types of knowing. We need to define common knowledge versus private knowledge.
Because it's not just, person A knowing a fact and person B knowing a fact.
Right. It's way deeper than that.
To really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at how the sources visualize these states of knowledge. Let's imagine a physical scenario.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
There is an event happening out in the world, let's say a bizarre spectacle in the center of a town square. Private knowledge is when you have 2 people, person A and person B, looking at this event, but there is a solid, impenetrable brick wall between them.
So they can't see each other at all.
Exactly. Person A sees the spectacle, person B sees the spectacle, they both know it's happening, but neither of them has any idea that the other person sees it. They are just entirely trapped in their own subjective bubbles.
So if you're listening to this right now, you might hold a piece of private knowledge that millions of other people also hold. But because of that brick wall, you feel entirely alone in knowing it. You think you're the only one.
Right, it's isolating. Now, let's upgrade that state of knowledge. Imagine we take a drill and bore a tiny keyhole into that brick wall.
Okay.
Now, person A looks through the keyhole and sees person B watching the event. Person B looks through their keyhole and sees person A watching the event.
So they're spying on each other.
Basically, yeah. They both see the spectacle and they both see the other person seeing it. This is a step up. This is called reciprocal knowledge.
But reciprocal knowledge still feels, sneaky. Because they're looking through a keyhole, they think they're spying. Person A doesn't know that person B saw them looking.
Exactly.
I might know that you know the secret, but I don't know if you know that I know. It's still disconnected.
Yeah, reciprocal knowledge still falls way short of true coordination. It lacks the guarantee of mutual awareness. To reach the final stage, the ultimate catalyst for human behavior, we have to tear that brick wall down completely.
Just demolish it.
Demolish it. Person A and person B are now standing in a wide open field. The spectacle happens. They see the spectacle. They see each other seeing the spectacle. They see each other seeing it.
It becomes an infinite loop.
Yes, an infinite loop. A knows that B knows that A knows that B knows. Ad infinitum. That is common knowledge.
And that infinite loop sounds like it would require like a supercomputer to calculate. I mean, I don't sit around consciously calculating infinite layers of, I know that you know that I know.
No, of course not. That would be exhausting.
The sources point out that we just experience it intuitively as something being out there or in public. And the classic perfect illustration of this is Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Emperor's New Clothes.
Oh, it's such a brilliant example. What's fascinating here is how perfectly that fairy tale captures the explosive, destabilizing power of common knowledge.
Right.
Think about the crowd standing on the street watching the naked emperor parade by. Every single person in that crowd has functioning eyes.
Yeah, they aren't blind.
Right. They all possess the absolute private knowledge that the emperor is completely naked.
But they're all cheering. They're clapping and complimenting the beautiful stitching on the invisible fabrics.
Exactly.
And they're doing that because they don't know that the person standing shoulder to shoulder with them also sees a naked man. They are trapped behind that brick wall of private knowledge. They're terrified of being the only foolish person who can't see the magic clothes.
Then the little boy shouts out, "He has no clothes on."
The famous moment.
Right. If we analyze this from a purely informational standpoint, the boy did not provide the crowd with any new data about the emperor's state of dress.
They didn't suddenly realize he was naked because the boy said so.
No, they already knew.
The boy didn't change the facts on the ground. He changed the architecture of their awareness. By blurting it out conspicuously, loudly, in the open field, he ensured that everyone in the crowd now knew that everyone else knew.
He took widespread private knowledge and instantly converted it into common knowledge.
And the moment that wall came down, the social dynamic just entirely shifted from fearful deference to open ridicule. The spell was broken simply by making the private public.
Yeah, we navigate our social world by constantly reading the minds of mind readers. We possess this kind of invisible sense organ for common knowledge.
A sense organ, I like that.
Yeah, we're capable of recursive mentalizing, thinking about thoughts. And we can actually derive physical truths about reality simply from the inactivity of others based on what we know they know.
Which brings us right back to the dinner party scenario you opened with.
The spinach puzzle.
Okay, I have to walk through this because it is absolutely diabolical, and it proves how heavily we rely on this invisible sense organ.
It really does.
So we have our polite dinner party. 12 highly analytical psychologists. 3 of them have massive pieces of spinach in their teeth. Everyone can see everyone else's teeth, but nobody can see their own, and nobody's speaking up.
It's the ultimate standoff.
So the department chair decides to intervene without embarrassing anyone directly. She clinks her glass and makes a general announcement to the entire table. She says, "At least one of you has spinach in your teeth. I'm going to clink my glass at regular intervals. When you figure out it is you, please excuse yourself and remove it."
Okay, so the game begins.
She clinks the glass once. Nobody moves. She clinks it a second time. Still, nobody moves. The room is dead silent. She clinks the glass a third time. Instantly, simultaneously, the 3 psychologists with spinach in their teeth reach up and pick it clean.
It seems like magic.
How did they calculate that?
Well, to solve this, you have to put yourself in the mind of one of the psychologists with the messy teeth. And the best way to do that is to scale the problem down.
Make it simpler.
Exactly. Let's imagine a simpler version of the dinner party. What if only one person had spinach in their teeth? Let's say it's you.
Okay, if it's just me, the chair says at least one cousin has spinach. I look around the table, I see 11 people with perfectly clean teeth. So the at least one must be me.
Right.
I don't even need a second clink. I clean my teeth on the very first clink.
Easy. But in our scenario, no one cleaned their teeth on the first clink, so we know it cannot be just one person. Now imagine there are 2 people with spinach in their teeth. Let's call them Xavier and Yolande.
Xavier and Yolande, got it.
The chair makes the announcement. Xavier looks around the table and sees Yolande with a huge green leaf in her teeth. He relaxes. He thinks to himself, Yolande has the spinach. My teeth are probably fine.
And Yolande is looking across the table at Xavier, thinking the exact same thing. Xavier is the messy one. I'm safe.
Exactly. Then the first clink happens. Xavier watches Yolande. If Yolanda was the only one with spinach, she would have looked around, seen everyone else was clean, and cleaned her teeth on the first clink, just like in your solo example.
Right.
But Yolande's does not move.
Which means Yolande must see someone else with spinach in their teeth. If she only saw clean teeth, she would have acted. Her inactivity is a huge piece of data.
It's everything. Xavier realizes this instantly. He thinks, wait, Yolande didn't move. She must see someone else with spinach. I am looking at everyone else and their teeth are clean. Therefore, the second person she sees must be me.
Oh, wow. So on the second clink, Xavier and Yolande both realize their predicament and clean their teeth.
Precisely. But in our actual puzzle, there are 3 people with spinach. So they go through this exact same mental gymnastics, just adding one more layer of recursive thinking.
Right. So when nobody moves on the first clink, they know it's not just one person. When nobody moves on the second clink, the 3 people with spinach realize that the other 2 messy people must be looking at a third messy person.
And since everyone else at the table is clean,
that third person must be themselves. So they all clean their teeth on the third clink. It's a cascade of logic driven entirely by silence.
it demonstrates that humans don't just process direct information. We process the shadows of information. We process what other people's lack of action says about their internal state of knowledge.
That's wild.
The sources bring up literary examples of this too, showing how deeply embedded this is in human storytelling. Consider Edgar Allan Poe's famous detective story, The Purloined Letter.
Oh, I remember that one.
Right. The detective figures out where a blackmail letter is hidden, not by tearing the room apart looking for secret compartments, but by getting inside the blackmailer's head. The blackmailer knows the police will assume he hid it in a complex secret compartment, so he hides it in plain sight on a letter rack.
He's playing off what he knows they know.
Exactly. The detective deduces the physical location of an object purely by mapping the common knowledge of the participants.
There's also that great courtroom joke in the sources that plays on this exact mechanic.
Oh, the defense attorney joke.
Yeah. So a defense attorney knows he's losing a murder trial because the prosecution hasn't found a body. So he tries this desperate psychological trick. He looks at his watch and tells the jury, "Ladies and gentlemen, in exactly 1 minute, the supposed murder victim is going to walk through those courtroom doors."
A bold move.
Super bold. The entire jury gasps. They all turn and stare at the doors, waiting in suspense. A full minute passes. The doors stay closed. The lawyer turns back to them and says, "I made that up. But the fact that every single one of you looked at the doors proves that you have reasonable doubt that he is dead. You must acquit."
It's a clever ploy.
It is. But the punchline reveals the deeper layer of cognitive awareness. The jury goes into deliberation and comes back in 5 minutes with a guilty verdict. The lawyer is stunned. He asks the jury foreman, "How could you convict him? You all stared at the door. You had doubt." And the jury foreman replies, "Yes, we looked, but your client didn't."
It's a perfect demonstration.
I love that so much. The jury deduced the client's guilt from his state of knowledge. If he was truly innocent, he would have looked at the door too, hoping for a miracle to save his life. But because he held the private knowledge that he killed the victim, he didn't bother looking. His lack of action betrayed his private knowledge to the group.
We're constantly running these background calculations, and this isn't just a party trick for solving logic puzzles or writing jokes. It serves a fundamental evolutionary purpose.
Okay, let's unpack this. I look at common knowledge sort of like that moment in an escape room.
Yeah.
You know, you're stuck in a room with your friend, the clock is ticking down, you're desperately digging through all this random junk.
We all been there.
Right. Suddenly, you both spot the hidden UV flashlight on a high shelf at the exact same time. You make eye contact. You don't just see the flashlight, you see them seeing the flashlight.
Yeah.
And instantly, without saying a single word, you both just pivot and run toward it together.
No communication needed.
None. One of you grabs the stool, the other grabs the flashlight. It's this electric jolt of shared reality that allows you to act as a single coordinated unit.
That electric jolt is the realization of a coordination equilibrium. And if common knowledge is the spark that allows 2 people in a room to act together seamlessly, the next logical frontier the source material explores is the question of scale.
Right.
If we can do an escape room together, how does humanity use this invisible engine to build massive societal structures? How do we build language, global markets, and entire nations?
How do we get from 2 people finding a flashlight to millions of people agreeing on a currency? The sources make a really important distinction here between 2 types of human interaction: cooperation versus coordination.
This is key.
Usually when we think about evolutionary biology and why humans work together, we think about the prisoner's dilemma.
The classic scenario.
Yeah, this is where two partners in crime are arrested and interrogated in separate rooms. The police offer them a deal. If they both stay silent, if they cooperate with each other, they get a light sentence of 1 year. But the police tell each of them, if you rat out your partner, you go free and your partner gets 10 years.
The prisoner's dilemma is a model of altruism and its inherent vulnerabilities. For the two criminals to get the best combined outcome, they have to sacrifice their own dominant self-interest.
They have to actively fight the urge to be selfish.
Exactly. They have to suppress the urge to rat the other person out and go free. It requires immense trust, and it is highly vulnerable to cheating. But the source points out that we have been somewhat obsessed with this specific model, treating it like a universal hammer for every social nail.
Because not everything in society is a battle against our own selfishness, right?
Right.
The other side of the coin is coordination. This is mutualism. This is a scenario where everybody wins, nobody has to sacrifice anything, and nobody's even tempted to cheat. The example the source uses is from nature. The oxpecker bird and the zebra.
A great example.
The bird lands on the zebra and eats the ticks off its back. The bird gets a delicious meal, and the zebra gets rid of annoying disease-carrying parasites. The zebra isn't suppressing an urge to eat the bird. The bird isn't suppressing an urge to attack the zebra. They just need to find each other and get on the same page.
The challenge in a coordination problem is not a lack of trust. It's purely cognitive. It is the challenge of finding that same page when there are multiple pages available. You want to align, but how do you choose the right point of alignment?
Which is hard.
It is, and language itself is our very first and perhaps most profound exercise in solving this.
I found the study they cited on how children learn language absolutely fascinating.
The Diesendruck-Markson study.
Yes. So they took 3-year-old children and showed them a weird, unfamiliar object. I think it was a strange-looking dumpling press.
Something totally foreign to a toddler.
Exactly. They taught the kids a made-up word for it. They pointed to it and said, "This is a meth." Then a few minutes later, a total stranger walks into the room. The researchers observed that the kids immediately assumed the stranger also knew the word meth.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals something deep about human hardwiring. Children tacitly assume that words are common knowledge.
Just by default.
Yes. Now, they don't indiscriminately assume strangers know everything. The researchers ran a control where they taught the kids a private, episodic fact like, "My cat likes to play with this object."
Oh.
When the stranger walked in, the kids did not expect the stranger to know about their cat. But words, they assume a shared convention. Language is not deduced from logic. It works purely because we expect everyone else to interpret the sound the exact same way we do, and they expect us to do the same. It is an assumption of an open field.
But what happens when we're adults and we can't use language to coordinate?
Yeah.
The sources outline a classic coordination scenario called the rendezvous game.
Oh, this is a stressful one.
Let's say we have two friends, James and Charlotte. They're supposed to meet for coffee in their hometown, but both of their cell phones instantly die before they can text each other a location.
A modern nightmare.
Truly. They both know there are only 2 cafes in town, the Java Joint and the Coffee Connection. James knows Charlotte prefers the Coffee Connection, so he starts walking there to be nice.
Very thoughtful.
But then he realizes Charlotte knows that he prefers the Java Joint, so she is probably heading there to be nice to him. So he turns around.
Then the loop begins.
Right. But wait. She probably knows that he knows that she knows, and they are trapped in this infinite loop of empathy, walking back and forth between the 2 cafes, never meeting.
They don't need trust to solve this. They need a psychological anchor. They need what the Nobel laureate economist Thomas Schelling called a focal point.
A focal point.
Yes, a focal point is a solution that naturally jumps out to both parties because of its common salience. It doesn't have to be the mathematically best option. It just has to be the most obvious one to everyone involved.
Okay, so how does that work for James and Charlotte?
Let's imagine the Java Joint happens to be running a massive, obnoxious advertising campaign that week, plastering neon posters all over town. Those posters do not make the coffee taste any better, but they intrude on both James and Charlotte's consciousness.
You can't ignore it.
Right. The Java Joint becomes a common anchor. James thinks Charlotte has definitely seen those posters and she knows I've seen them. They can break the impasse and confidently head to the same place.
Which brings us to a massive, multi-million-dollar application of this theory. The Super Bowl.
The ultimate open field.
Why on earth do companies pay millions and millions of dollars for 30 seconds of airtime during the Super Bowl? The source material looks at the famous 1984 Apple Macintosh ad.
Directed by Ridley Scott.
Yeah, it showed this dystopian gray 1984-style world with drone-like workers staring at a screen, and a woman in bright athletic clothes runs up and throws a sledgehammer into the giant screen.
Visually stunning.
But the ad didn't mention how much RAM the computer had. It didn't show the mouse. It didn't even explain what the computer actually did.
And yet, it's considered one of the greatest, most effective advertisements in corporate history. Why? Because Apple was introducing a completely new, unproven computing platform. To succeed, they faced a massive coordination problem known in economics as network externalities.
What does that mean in this context?
They needed to convince software developers to spend thousands of hours writing programs for the Macintosh. But developers will not write software for a computer that has no consumers. At the same time, consumers will not buy a computer that has no software. Both sides are waiting for the other to move.
So the Super Bowl ad wasn't just about reaching millions of individual people to say, hey, we have a computer. It was about reaching millions of people who knew that millions of other people were watching the exact same ad at the exact same time.
Exactly. It was an engine for generating instant common knowledge. When you sat on your couch and watched that sledgehammer smash the screen, you knew that millions of other potential buyers were intrigued by this upstart technology at that exact second.
You saw them seeing it.
Yes. And more importantly, the software developers watching knew that millions of consumers were watching. It established the Macintosh as a massive cultural focal point, giving everyone the confidence to coordinate around this new standard simultaneously.
And the sources compare this Macintosh success story to what happened in 2022 during what they called the crypto bull.
A very different outcome.
Very different. All these cryptocurrency exchanges bought massive Super Bowl ads featuring huge celebrities like Matt Damon and Larry David telling people fortune favors the brave and don't miss out on the next big thing.
They were using the exact same playbook.
But wait, I have to push back here. With the Macintosh, Apple was selling a physical machine. It sat on your desk and computed things. If cryptocurrency has no underlying objective value, if it's just digital code floating in the ether, aren't they just using the mechanics of common knowledge to sell a complete illusion?
This raises an important question about the nature of value itself. The reality is that traditional fiat currency, the US dollar or the euro in your wallet, works on the exact same psychological mechanism.
Wait, really?
Think about it. Why does a grocery store accept a green piece of paper with a dead president on it in exchange for actual life-sustaining food? It's not because the paper has intrinsic caloric value.
No, obviously not.
It's solely because the grocery store possesses the common knowledge that their suppliers will accept that same paper tomorrow, and the suppliers know their landlords will accept it, and so on. The value of a fiat currency is a self-sustaining convention built entirely on common expectation.
Okay, that makes sense. The paper is just a focal point for our shared belief. But if the dollar and a digital crypto token are both powered by belief, what was the difference? Why did the crypto market implode while the dollar keeps working?
With a stable fiat currency, the government and the central bank act as the ultimate guarantors of that common knowledge. With speculative cryptocurrency, that common expectation had to be artificially whipped up out of nothing. The crypto bull ads were attempting to create a common expectation of a bubble. They wanted you to buy in because you believed everyone else was about to buy in. You were buying the assumption of future demand.
Right.
But as we saw with the collapse of the FTX exchange later that year, common knowledge is a double-edged sword.
Because FTX crashed when a leaked balance sheet showed they were basically holding reserves in their own made-up token. The illusion broke.
When a new piece of negative, undeniable information becomes common knowledge, the shared expectation of value unravels instantly. Every single investor realizes that every other investor is about to panic.
You know that they know the ship is sinking.
Exactly. So you rush to the exits to beat them, which causes them to run faster, and you get an instant bank run. The common knowledge that built the trillion-dollar brand overnight is the exact same force that tears it down to zero.
If millions of dollars can artificially manufacture common knowledge to build a brand, it stands to reason that someone with enough power could artificially suppress common knowledge to save their own regime.
That's the dark side of coordination.
Let's look at autocracies. The sources share this old, darkly funny Soviet joke. A man is standing in the middle of the Moscow train station, rapidly handing out leaflets to everyone walking by. The KGB spots him, rushes over, tackles him to the ground, and grabs the stack of leaflets.
Classic setup.
Right. The KGB officer looks at them and discovers that they are completely blank pieces of paper. The officer yells, "What is the meaning of this? There's nothing written here." And the man replies, "What is there to write?" It's so obvious.
It's a profound joke because it cuts to the absolute core of why dictators are so deeply terrified of free speech. The man with the blank leaflets was engaging in the exact same mechanism as the little boy in the emperor's new clothes.
He was trying to generate common knowledge.
Yes. In a severely repressive regime, millions of people might privately hate the dictator. They might be starving, they might be oppressed. But because of state censorship and the threat of secret police, no one knows that the majority agrees with them.
They think they're alone.
Every citizen thinks they are the only one who is angry, or they think they are part of a small, powerless minority. Sociologists call this a state of pluralistic ignorance or a spiral of silence.
You feel totally alone in your misery. You think everyone else is a loyalist, so you keep your mouth shut to survive.
But when a protest finally manages to happen in a public square, the dynamic flips. Every citizen watching from their window can see everyone else seeing the protest. The pluralistic ignorance dissolves in an instant.
That brick wall falls down.
The citizens finally possess the common knowledge required to coordinate. They realize we outnumber them. And that realization sparks a massive resistance that the regime cannot possibly suppress by force because you cannot arrest your entire population.
And the sources detail how modern dictatorships have adapted to this threat. They call it the dictator's learning curve.
The methods have evolved.
Yeah, for example, the Chinese government employs tens of thousands of sensors to monitor their domestic social media platforms. But here is the truly surprising part that the research reveals. They don't primarily censor posts that just criticize the government.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does. If you post a complaint about local corruption or a bad policy, it might stay up. They actually use those critical posts as a massive feedback mechanism to fire incompetent local officials and relieve public pressure. What they relentlessly, ruthlessly scrub from the internet are posts that attempt to coordinate action.
They are targeting the generation of common knowledge. A post organizing a rally, even if the rally is for a pro-government cause or environmental cleanup, will be deleted immediately.
Because the gathering itself is the threat.
The regime understands that the capacity to coordinate is the true existential threat. The content of the gathering does not matter. The gathering itself is dangerous because it proves the citizens can act as a single unit. And this, in turn, sparks incredible, desperate creativity from activists trying to establish focal points without triggering the algorithmic censors.
That's why we see those amazing workarounds. Activists using umbrellas during the Hong Kong protests, holding up blank pieces of white paper, wearing specific colors on a certain day.
Or the flash mobs.
Yeah, organizing flash mobs where everyone just meets in a mall and plays patty cake for 2 minutes and then disperses. To an outsider, it looks absurd. But they are desperate to create a signal that says, we are here, we are capable of moving together, and we all see each other.
Now, we must examine how this plays out in open societies. In democracies, with the rise of global social media platforms, we have billions of people who possess the power to instantly generate common knowledge at the push of a button.
Which is unprecedented.
And the sources argue that this frictionless coordination engine leads directly to the phenomenon of online mobs and cancel culture.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source details the tragic story of Justine Sacco to illustrate this.
And we should be explicitly clear here. Our purpose is to impartially analyze the underlying psychological and mechanical behavior of crowds.
Right, we're just looking at the mechanics here.
We are not taking a political stance on cancel culture, nor are we adjudicating the moral rightness or wrongness of the targets or the mobs.
Exactly.
The case of Justine Sacco is utilized in the literature because it so perfectly illustrates the sheer speed of the mechanism. She was a public relations director with only 170 Twitter followers.
So basically nobody.
Right. Before boarding a long-haul flight to South Africa, she posted a sardonic, arguably poorly constructed tweet attempting to mock white privilege. While she was in the air, completely disconnected from the internet, her tweet was picked up, its ironic intent was entirely stripped away, and it was retweeted until it became the #1 trend worldwide.
By the time her plane touched down, her entire life was dismantled. Her career was destroyed, her reputation was in ruins. She was receiving thousands of vicious death threats.
It happened in hours.
The social psychologist Jonathan Haidt used a terrifying analogy for this. He compared the invention of the retweet and share buttons to handing out 1 billion dart guns to the general public. It allows people to inflict pain and signal their own moral superiority from a distance at virtually zero personal cost.
But the evolutionary analysis goes even deeper than simply calling it virtue signaling. The researchers Peter DeSoli and Robert Kurzban put forward a compelling theory that moral condemnation in these massive mobs is actually a subconscious strategy for coalition building.
Coalition building. How so?
Human beings evolved to survive in groups. In tribal environments, you had to be very careful not to end up on the losing side of a conflict, because being cast out meant death. Therefore, when a dominant faction designates a certain act or a certain tweet as a profound offense, bystanders will quickly rush to join the mob in condemning the offender.
To protect themselves.
They are not necessarily doing this out of pure, deeply considered moral outrage. They're doing it to visibly align themselves with the dominant faction to ensure they are not the next target.
Wait, I have to push back on this.
Yeah.
Because if I condemn someone online for saying something awful, I feel like I'm doing it from my own internal moral compass. I feel anger. I don't feel like I'm consciously playing some cynical Machiavellian game of coordination just to save my own skin and join the winning tribe. Doesn't this theory just reduce us to cynical sheep?
It is entirely natural to feel that way, and the evolutionary theory beautifully accounts for your internal experience. Think of Shirley Jackson's famous short story, The Lottery, where a town gathers to stone one of their own to death for a good harvest. Or The 2 Minutes Hate in George Orwell's 1984.
Okay, yeah.
In those stories, the participants whip themselves into a genuine physiological frenzy of righteous anger. Self-deception is an incredibly powerful adaptive evolutionary tool. We deceive ourselves into experiencing genuine, heartfelt moral outrage because that makes us much more convincing members of the coalition.
That's unsettling.
If you cynically pretend to be outraged, your body language might betray you. You might hesitate. You might be found out as a faker. But if you actually truly believe you are morally outraged, you become the perfect, unimpeachable ally to the mob.
And the sources point out that for this coalition building to work efficiently, the infraction has to be undeniable and highly public. It has to be a perfect focal point. It can't be a highly nuanced debate about tax policy or zoning laws. Those are too complex to rally 1 million people around instantly.
It has to be simple.
It has to be a shared screenshot of a bad joke or a 10-second video clip taken completely out of context. The mob needs an easy, high-contrast target to coordinate around.
We are incredibly sensitive to what everyone else is doing. We possess a deep, primal drive to align our behavior with the perceived common knowledge of the group because historically our survival depended on it.
So we're hardwired to seek out common knowledge so we can coordinate safely. What happens when we actively try to establish common knowledge with a specific person and the technology we're using, or our own human psychology, gets in the way?
It creates a lot of friction.
If you're listening to this on your commute right now, think about the last time you tried to end a phone call and got stuck in that endless loop of, okay, well, I'll let you go.
Oh, that's the worst.
The sources explore this failure of coordination through a thought experiment called the electronic mail game.
This is a classic paradox in game theory that demonstrates why almost common knowledge is completely insufficient for true coordination. Let us return to our friends James and
Their signal is terrible. Texts keep dropping. James texts Charlotte, "Let's meet at the Coffee Connection. Reply to confirm you got this."
a reasonable request.
Charlotte receives it and she texts back, "Got it. See you there. Reply to confirm you got my confirmation." James received that text and he texts back, "Got your confirmation. Reply to confirm you got my confirmation of your confirmation."
It sounds absurd when spoken aloud, but mathematically this creates an inescapable infinite loop because the communication channel is imperfect because there is always a tiny chance a text gets dropped. Neither person can ever be 100% certain that the other person received the final message.
Right.
If James finally stops texting, Charlotte does not know if he got her last message or if his phone simply died. And James knows that Charlotte does not know. They are stuck in a spiral of reciprocal knowledge, but they never reach the open field of common knowledge.
The sources actually translate this into a life or death military scenario to really prove the math. It's often called the coordinated attack problem, or the Top Gun fighter pilot scenario.
Let's walk through this one.
Let's do it carefully. Let's say two fighter pilots, Pilot A and Pilot B, are flying in enemy territory in radio silence. Pilot A sees a target and radios Pilot B. Attack at dawn. Let's say their radio equipment is 90% reliable. That means there's a 9 in 10 chance the message gets through, Pilot B hears it, and they attack together successfully. 90% is pretty good odds.
Very good odds.
But wait, Pilot A wants to be perfectly safe. He doesn't want to fly in alone. So he demands an acknowledgement. He radios, attack at dawn. Acknowledge if you receive this.
And this demand for certainty is the mathematical trap. Let us look at the probabilities. Pilot A's strategy is now, I will only attack if I receive an acknowledgement from Pilot B. Pilot B's strategy is, I will only attack if I get the initial order.
Okay, so what's the chance of a successful coordinated attack now?
It requires the first message to get through, which is a 90% chance. And it requires the acknowledgement to get back through, which is another 90% chance. We have to multiply those probabilities.
Okay, 0.9 times 0.9, that is 0.81, that's 81%.
Exactly the paradox. By demanding an acknowledgement to increase their psychological certainty, they mathematically dropped the actual success rate of the mission from 90% down to 81%.
That is so counterintuitive.
Because think of the failure condition. If Pilot A sends the order and Pilot B gets it, but Pilot B's acknowledgement gets lost in the static, what happens? Pilot B attacks at dawn, assuming Pilot A is right beside him. But Pilot A, having not received the acknowledgement, assumes the first message failed and stays behind. Pilot B flies in alone and is shot down.
Demanding certainty actually creates more vulnerability. The math proves that without infinite layers of common knowledge, you can never guarantee perfect coordination. And we experience the frustration of this paradox in everyday life.
You really do.
The source mentions the old dial-up modems from the 90s, doing their screeching, handshaking protocol, constantly pinging back and forth, trying to confirm confirmations before they connect. Or think about crossing the street. This happens to me all the time.
Oh, the crosswalk dance.
Yes. I'm standing at a crosswalk. A car rolls up. I take a tentative step off the curb. The driver eases off the brake. I get spooked by the car moving, so I step back onto the curb. Seeing me retreat, the driver hits the brake again. I step forward. They ease off. We just stare at each other through the windshield. It's like a glitching video game character.
It really is.
You're trapped in this endless loop of reciprocal knowledge, constantly guessing the other person's intent. But without common knowledge, you are totally paralyzed.
It is the human physical equivalent of the electronic mail game. You are both trying to anticipate the other's movement based on imperfect sequential signals. This is precisely why the San Francisco airport put up specific signs at their terminal crosswalks that simply read, "Make eye contact with the driver before crossing."
Oh, I've seen those.
Eye contact cuts through the sequential loop. It establishes an instant visceral focal point. You see them seeing you simultaneously.
The sources also point out how this exact same coordination failure makes saying goodbye so unbelievably awkward. We've all been there. They call it the long goodbye. Or in Yiddish, there's a great term for it, klamka talk, which means talking with your hand on the doorknob.
It's a universal human experience.
Or that great joke from The Simpsons where the NSA is listening in on a couple on the phone going, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. No, you.
It is a profound, everyday social dilemma. A communal relationship, like a friendship or a romantic partnership, operates on the tacit underlying assumption of infinite, unbounded interest in one another. When you say, I have to leave or I have to hang up, you are unilaterally terminating a joint activity.
You're breaking the rule.
You are violating the unspoken norm of infinite friendship. Direct speech, just bluntly stating, I'm done talking to you now, goodbye, is considered too harsh. It implies a lack of care.
It sounds rude.
Exactly. So to preserve the relationship, we engage in this intricate, agonizing dance of subtle cues. We look at our watches, we slap our knees and say, welp. We exchange multiple rounds of, well, I should let you go, trying to establish the common knowledge that the interaction is over without anyone losing face or feeling rejected.
It's an exhausting dance. But as much as we struggle with imperfect communication and drop texts, the mathematical models of perfect communication lead to an even more shocking and counterintuitive reality. This blew my mind when I read the source material. We have to talk about the agreement theorem.
In 1976, the Nobel laureate mathematician Robert Aumann published a paper that serves as a direct assault on our daily common sense. Aumann mathematically proved that if two rational people have the same foundational understanding of the world, what statisticians call the same priors, and they share their subsequent conclusions with each other so that those conclusions become common knowledge, They cannot agree to disagree.
I read that sentence in the outline and just had to pause. I mean, we live in a world where every single person disagrees about everything constantly. Politics, sports, movies.
To understand how Aumann could claim this, we have to do a quick detour into Bayes' rule, right? We have to understand how rational people update their beliefs based on evidence.
Correct. Bayes' rule is the fundamental mathematical formula for rational thinking. It dictates how you should change your mind when you encounter new information. It states that your degree of belief in a conclusion, your posterior probability, should be based on three interacting factors. Your prior belief, multiplied by the likelihood of the evidence itself, divided by the overall prevalence of that evidence in the world. Okay, let's ground this with the example from the source, because the math terms can get blurry. Let's say I wake up with a terrible headache. I go on WebMD and I punch in my symptoms. WebMD tells me that a headache is a symptom of a rare brain tumor. Suddenly I'm panicking.
A classic internet panic.
Right. But if I use Bayes' rule, I have to look at my priors. My prior belief that I have a brain tumor should be incredibly low because it's a very, very rare disease. Now, the likelihood of a brain tumor causing a headache is high. Let's say 90% of people with tumors get headaches.
Right.
But I have to divide that by the overall prevalence of headaches in the world. Millions of people get headaches every day from staring at screens or not drinking enough water or skipping coffee. So rationally, when I crunch those numbers, I update my belief to conclude, I almost certainly just need a glass of water. I do not need brain surgery.
That is perfect Bayesian updating. You weighed the new evidence against the foundational probability. Now, take that rational updating process and apply it to Aumann's theorem using a wonderful thought experiment from the sources, the literary prize.
Okay, let's walk through this.
Imagine you and I are trying to guess who will win a prestigious upcoming book award. There are 4 finalists: Amy, a 42-year-old American woman; Andy, a 71-year-old American man; Alice, a 65-year-old American woman; and Barnaby, a 37-year-old British man. We both start with the exact same priors. Knowing nothing else, each of the 4 authors has a 25% chance of winning.
Okay, 4 authors, an equal 25% slice of the pie for each.
Now imagine a corrupt judge leaks partial private information to us. The judge secretly tells you the age of the winner. The judge says the winner is under 50 years old. Separately, the judge secretly tells me the sex of the winner. The judge says the winner is female. We are strictly forbidden from telling each other the specific clue we received. We can only tell each other our updated conclusion, our posterior probability.
Let me work this out like a logic puzzle. I know the winner is under 50. I look at the list. There are only 2 young authors, Amy, who is 42, and Barnaby, who is 37. Andy and Alice are out. So my rationally updated conclusion is that it's a coin toss between Amy and Barnaby. 50% chance for Amy, 50% chance for Barnaby, 0% for the older folks. I announce that conclusion to you.
And I know the winner is female. I look at the list. There are only 2 women, Amy and Alice. So my logically updated conclusion is a 50% chance for Amy, a 50% chance for Alice, and 0% for the men. I announce that conclusion to you.
So we share our conclusions out loud. They become common knowledge. I hear you say there is a 0% chance for Barnaby. You wouldn't say that unless your secret clue eliminated him. So I cross Barnaby off my list.
Right.
You hear me say there's a 0% chance for Alice. You cross her off your list. The only candidate left with a positive probability for both of us is Amy. We converge instantly on a 100% probability for Amy. We agree completely without ever knowing what the other person's secret clue was.
That is the simplified, elegant version. But Aumann proved that even if the clues are vastly more complex and ambiguous, as long as our conclusions become common knowledge, we must mathematically converge on the exact same probability.
Wait, really? Even if it's super complicated?
Yes. If we just bounce our updated conclusions back and forth, if I say I'm at 60% and you say, okay, well, based on that, I'm at 40%, and I say, interesting, that moves me down to 45%, we are mathematically distilling each other's hard-won private knowledge. The path to agreement might look like a chaotic, unpredictable zigzag, what mathematicians call a random walk, but eventually, inevitably, we will reach the exact same number.
That's incredible.
And if we do not reach the same number, Aumann proves that one of us is being irrational. One of us is stubbornly ignoring perfectly good information.
And the sources apply this theorem directly to the stock market, which is fascinating. This theorem basically proves that the very concept of speculative day trading is totally irrational.
It absolutely is.
Think about it. If I log into my brokerage account and I want to buy a share of a tech stock at $100, and you were on the other side of the trade wanting to sell it to me at $100, we are fundamentally agreeing to disagree on its future value. I think it will go up to $120. You think it will crash to $80. But the price of $100 is common knowledge. It reflects the aggregated information of every single analyst and algorithm in the entire market.
Exactly.
If I sit on my couch and think I know better than the market price, I'm suffering from the greater fool theory. I am arrogantly assuming my private clue is better than everyone else's combined.
Which is precisely why financial experts universally advise everyday people to invest in broad index funds rather than trying to pick individual hot stocks. You cannot rationally outsmart a market where the price is common knowledge because the price already incorporates your reasons for wanting to buy it.
So what does this all mean? Let me pause and ask the big question. If the math mathematically proves we can't agree to disagree, why does my Thanksgiving dinner end in a screaming match every single year? Why is our politics so incredibly polarized?
That is the human element creeping in.
The sources bring up the economists Tyler Cowen and Robin Hanson, who theorize that we disagree because we are secretly holding self-serving priors. They argue we secretly believe we are smarter or more moral or more clear-sighted than the person we are arguing with. We are deceiving ourselves to win the argument and protect our egos.
It is a profound and uncomfortable indictment of the human ego. We pad our calculations with self-esteem.
But wait, I have to challenge this premise entirely. Why should we have the same priors? I grew up in a different town with different parents, experiencing different hardships and reading different books than someone else. My starting line in life is naturally objectively different than yours. Isn't it logical that my foundational view of the world, my priors, would be different?
It feels logical to our deeply human sensibilities. We cherish our individual experiences, but from a purely rational mathematical standpoint, we have to invoke the philosopher John Rawls's concept of the veil of ignorance.
The veil of ignorance, okay.
The objective truth of the universe, whether a specific vaccine actually works or who mathematically won an election or whether there's liquid water on Mars, does not care about your personal background. It does not care where you grew up or how your parents raised you or what your ego demands. Rational agents must view the world from the perspective of eternity. Your unique lived experience is just another piece of data. If you are truly, purely rational, you must weigh the other person's lived experience and data as equally valid to your own.
Man, that is a heavy, beautiful, but extremely difficult ideal to live up to. Because humans are not purely rational calculating machines. We are messy, emotional, tribal creatures. Perfect Bayesian rationality is basically off the table for us in everyday life. So if we can't mathematically calculate our way to perfect agreement, how do we actually navigate our differences and coordinate society without killing each other? We play games.
Exactly. We rely on the messy, ad hoc, historically accidental conventions that game theory attempts to model. The final section of our sources explores these classic coordination games, and they are incredibly illuminating. Let us start with the stag hunt.
I love this one. The stag hunt comes from a parable by the Enlightenment philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was writing about the origins of inequality and mutual dependence. Imagine two hunters, François-Marie and Jean-Jacques. They go out into the freezing, dark woods.
Just setting the scene.
They know that if they work together and hold their positions, they can take down a massive stag. If they get the stag, they will both eat like kings for a month. It's the ultimate payoff. But they have to wait patiently in the cold. While they are waiting, a tiny little hare hops by François-Marie's hiding spot.
A temptation.
If he abandons his post, he can easily catch the hare and have a guaranteed warm dinner for himself tonight. But if he does that, Jean-Jacques will be left alone, unable to catch the stag by himself, and he will starve.
It is a profound dilemma of trust and assurance. The optimal equilibrium is clearly to hunt the stag together. The payoff is massive. But the safe fallback equilibrium is to hunt the hare alone.
Right.
The tension here is not driven by malice. François-Marie does not want Jean-Jacques to starve. The tension is driven purely by uncertainty. If François-Marie is even slightly worried that Jean-Jacques might get impatient and chase a hare on his side of the woods, François-Marie's most rational move is to abandon the stag and chase the hare himself, just to avoid being left with nothing. The fear of defection causes the defection.
And the sources show how real-world societies solved this terrifying dilemma. They looked at the Lamelaran whale hunters in Indonesia. These guys hunt massive, dangerous whales in small wooden boats. It requires a dozen men working in perfect synchronized harmony. Someone has to steer, someone has to manage the ropes, someone has to throw the harpoon.
A real-life stag hunt.
Exactly. If one guy flakes or gets scared and drops his rope, the boat tips and they all die. They're playing a high-stakes, life-or-death stag hunt every single day. So how do they guarantee nobody chases the hare? They use the cultural convention of patrilineal descent. They strictly mandate that they only hunt in boats with men descended from the exact same grandfather.
It is a brilliant, life-saving cultural focal point. Think about the alternative. If they just hunted with friends, the boundaries of friendship are fuzzy. Who counts as a good enough friend? Under pressure, that ambiguity creates uncertainty, which leads to the hair equilibrium.
I doubt them.
But patrilineal descent is crisp, binary, undeniable, common knowledge. Everyone in the village knows exactly who belongs in which boat, and they know that everyone else knows. It removes the debilitating uncertainty that would cause the stag hunt to collapse.
Next, the sources look at the battle of the sexes. This is a bargaining game. Let's say a couple, Steve and Rebecca, want to go on a date. Steve desperately wants to go to a hockey game. Rebecca desperately wants to go to the opera. They both agree that spending the evening together at their second choice event is vastly better than sitting home alone and missing out on the date entirely. How do they resolve this standoff?
This is where we see the power of the paradoxical tactic. In a bargaining game, having more options actually makes you weaker. If Steve can credibly signal that he is completely physically inflexible, he forces Rebecca to concede.
How does he do that?
For example, let's say Steve preemptively buys non-refundable expensive hockey tickets, leaves his cell phone at home, and drives to the stadium. By deliberately throwing away his own options to compromise, he limits her options. She now has to choose between joining him at the hockey game or staying home alone.
Which scales up to the most terrifying game of all, chicken, or the hawk-dove game. The classic movie scene is two rebellious teenagers driving their cars straight at each other on a narrow road. The first one to swerve is labeled the chicken. If neither swerves, they both die in a fiery crash. The optimal move is to drive straight like a hawk while forcing the other guy to swerve like a dove. And you can win this game using that paradoxical tactic. If you visibly rip your steering wheel off and throw it out the window, the other driver sees that you cannot swerve, so they must swerve to save their own life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global history, this is the exact mechanic of the Cold War. You had two nuclear superpowers playing a global game of chicken, and the strategies designed to survive it were mathematically sound but existentially terrifying. The source references Stanley Kubrick's brilliant film Dr. Strangelove, where the Soviet Union builds a doomsday machine.
The doomsday machine.
Yes. It is a computer system that will automatically, irreversibly destroy the entire world if Russia is ever attacked. It is the ultimate paradoxical tactic. They remove human decision-making entirely. They throw the steering wheel out the window. But the grand tragedy in the movie is that the Soviets kept the doomsday machine a secret.
Right. There's that incredible line where Dr. Strangelove screams, "The whole point of the doomsday machine is lost if you keep it a secret." Because without common knowledge, the paradoxical tactic is completely useless. If the Americans don't know the machine exists, they aren't deterred from attacking. The machine only works if everyone knows it exists and knows that everyone else knows.
Fortunately, in the real world, we rely on less explosive conventions to solve hawk-dove games. The source highlights the territorial integrity norm that emerged after the chaos of World War II. The international community basically agreed to a massive global focal point. Whatever the borders are right now, we keep them.
Just stick to the map.
Those borders might be historically arbitrary. They might have been drawn by colonial powers with a ruler, but they serve as a universally recognized convention. If two countries are arguing over a patch of land, the default common knowledge convention is to stick to the map. It gives the dove a socially sanctioned, honorable reason to stand their ground, and it gives the hawk a reason to back down without losing face domestically.
I think of this on a much smaller, highly relatable scale every time I go to the grocery store. I am pushing my shopping cart down the cereal aisle, and someone else turns the corner with their cart, and the middle of the aisle is blocked by a massive display of soup cans. Only one cart can pass at a time. We are playing a hawk-dove game. Who backs up? We don't crash our carts into each other in a fiery wreck. We don't rip our steering wheels off. We rely on these tiny, unwritten cultural rules. Who got to the bottleneck first? Who has fewer items in their cart? Who is visibly older? We use the exact same psychological mechanics to resolve a standoff over Cheerios that nuclear-armed nations use to prevent World War III.
And that profound realization leads us to a theory from the legal scholar Richard McAdams called the expressive law. We traditionally assume that laws work purely because of coercion. You stop at the red light because the police will arrest you and fine you if you do not. But McAdams argues that many laws work purely by acting as focal points that establish common knowledge. Take no smoking signs in a restaurant. Before those signs existed, if someone lit up a cigarette in a crowded diner, a non-smoker might be coughing and annoyed. But they usually wouldn't say anything because they did not know if the rest of the room would support them in a confrontation.
Right. They were trapped behind the brick wall. They lacked common knowledge of the room's preferences.
Exactly. But once the local government passes an ordinance and forces the restaurant to put up a no smoking sign, the sign acts as an expressive focal point. It alters the architecture of awareness. The non-smoker now knows that the smoker knows smoking is forbidden, and the non-smoker knows that everyone else in the room knows it too. The sign emboldens the dove to stand their ground and tell the smoker to put it out because they know they have the implicit backing of the coalition. The police almost never have to be called. The common knowledge does all the enforcing. Game theory ultimately proves that human culture, our weird conventions, our arbitrary borders, our polite manners, our street signs, is deeply, profoundly practical. Culture is simply the set of focal points we use to survive the endless coordination games of life.
Wow. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started with the agonizing silence of spinach in our teeth. We looked at how toddlers naturally assume words are shared property. We survived the infinite loop of the electronic mail game. We mathematically proved we can't rationally agree to disagree. We somehow avoided a nuclear doomsday machine. And it all comes back to this one invisible engine. Our world is built on self-reinforcing conventions made real by common knowledge. We only function as a society because we know that everyone else knows what we know. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on all these sources but takes it right into the palm of your hand.
Government.
In the modern digital age, our algorithmic feeds on social media and video platforms are becoming intensely, deeply customized. The internet used to be a town square, a shared experience like the Super Bowl, where we all watched the same cultural moments. Now, if you and your neighbor are both sitting on your respective couches looking at your phones, you might happen to see the same viral video. But because your feeds are so aggressively personalized, you can never be entirely sure the other person saw it, or saw the same comment section, or received the same political context. Are our customized digital algorithms secretly destroying our capacity for common knowledge? By trapping us in hyper-personalized filter bubbles designed to maximize our individual engagement, are we accidentally rebuilding the clipped walls from the beginning of our deep dive? Are we trapping ourselves back into the keyholes of reciprocal knowledge, where we think we know what's going on in the world, but we have lost the open field? And if we lose that open field, is true societal coordination becoming impossible?
That is a chilling and vital question to ponder as we move further into the digital age.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope you walk away with a new lens on the world. Keep questioning the invisible rules of the games you play every single day. We'll see you next time.